When it comes to microdosing, what are any potential harms, and are there any populations that you don't suggest would use it?
That's a good question. Going back to that idea of fear, we like to put a lot of labels on if you have this diagnosis or that diagnosis, then you shouldn't use mushrooms because they're potentially hallucinogenic. So I don't look at a diagnosis. But the reason that we have diagnoses, the DSM-5, was created for clinicians to be able to have conversations between them without describing all the symptoms. Instead of just saying, well, this person has a really foggy brain and high blood pressure, their heart rate gets really increased, sometimes they can't breathe, we say, oh, they have anxiety. So that's where these ideas, these terms of diagnosis have come from. So to use those, an individual who may have the symptoms that equate to schizophrenia or extreme bipolar disorder, if those individuals live alone and do not have somebody that is overseeing them, our clinic does not provide any psilocybin, because what tends to go along with a part of the symptomology that they experience and their perception of the world is a lack of self-regulation when it comes to certain substances and behaviors, or connection to what is real and what is not real. And we don't want to participate in an aspect of anything that could cause potential harm. When we look at microdosing, though, I certainly have had clients who fall under the DSM-5 description of bipolar disorder who have started microdosing, and they are way more compliant with their psilocybin than they ever were with lithium or any of the other medications they were on. So to say if someone is on lithium, they shouldn't microdose, as a clinician, I don't believe that that is always a true and fair statement for the individual. But is there a way for there to be oversight with them using something in a small dose that is not just dependent on themselves in using that? A couple of the other just physiological indicators will be somebody with a high heart rate or high blood pressure already, because of the way psilocybin stimulates the prefrontal cortex and can enhance, some of the warming of the body and does have a stimulation effect to it, then those individuals need to have an awareness. Again, when we look at the literature, most of that is looking at large doses. So if you have a heart condition, going and taking a large dose of psilocybin can potentially have a negative effect for you when it comes to your heart rate. That is something you need to be aware of. Microdosing, again, very, very small dose, start low, go slow, find out what's helpful to you, but listen to your body and pay attention to it. And if you're having a negative indication somewhere else, then go backwards on it or pause. There's no contraindication to missing days when it comes to microdosing either, like we've talked about. Half-life is 2 hours and 43 minutes. We're not trying to get that substance to build up in the system. We're getting the benefits to build on themselves. So I would say the most common, what I'm going to call unwanted effect, is if somebody takes too much. And that's why I say start low, go slow, pay attention to what you're noticing. If you sit down and take a whole gram and say, oh, I thought that wasn't going to do anything to me, well, you're going to have a very different experience and you're going to have to just write it out. Unless you want to take some charcoal, which, just no, it doesn't take a lot of time for that experience to pass. But if you're doing this in a methodical way, again, the book that we provide really walks you through starting low, noticing the benefits, slowly increasing that dose until you find what's helpful to you, then it is unlikely that there are going to be negative indications from that. Minor things, some people say, oh, it makes me really tired for a while, or I might get a headache for a little bit initially. Most of those things people will work through over time. It's really the body adjusting to something different. But that's also where there can be some strain differences. Golden Teacher, 99.9% of people really like Golden Teacher. Those ones that don't, maybe B plus is a little bit more helpful or doesn't have the headache aspect to it in a microdose. So every person's body is different, but when we look at those things versus what we talk about in pharmaceutical side effects, as we would call them, it's not even apples to apples in that regard.